Charlotte owned a tiny diner in Brookhaven, a quaint Midwestern town known for its rolling hills and friendly neighbors. Her diner, Charlotte's Homestyle Diner, was a small, welcoming place with red leather booths and a polished counter that gleamed in the soft light. For 6 years, she had poured her heart into the business, working tirelessly to keep it running. But times were tough, and the diner was barely scraping by. Every morning, Charlotte arrived at the diner before dawn. She prepped the day's ingredients herself, insisting on fresh homemade meals that reminded people of family dinners. Her chicken and vegetable stew was a local favorite, and her cornbread, made from her grandmother's recipe, was legendary. Even so, fewer people were dining out, and the bills were piling up faster than she could pay them. One rainy November evening, as the wind howled outside, Charlotte sat at the counter, staring at the day's meager earnings. The diner was empty except for the soft hum of the kitchen appliances. She sighed, thinking about her children, Lucas and Emma, who were at home doing their homework. Lucas needed new cleats for his soccer team, and Emma had outgrown her winter coat. Charlotte had already postponed paying the electric bill, and now she wondered if she'd have to sell her wedding ring to make rent. The rain battered the windows, and Charlotte decided to close early. Just as she turned to lock the door, the bell jingled, and a man stepped inside. He was older, his coat soaked through and patched in places, and his shoes were caked in mud. Water pooled on the floor as he stood there, clutching a worn-out cap in his trembling hands. "I'm sorry for the mess," he said softly, avoiding her eyes. His voice was low, tinged with embarrassment. "I haven't eaten in days. I don't have money." Charlotte's heart ached. The man's thin frame and pale complexion told her he was telling the truth. She thought of the nights she had gone to bed hungry, saving every penny to keep her kids fed during those first hard years after her husband passed away. She gave the man a warm smile. "Don't worry about the mess or the money," she said gently. "Take a seat, and let me fix you something warm." The man hesitated, his pride holding him back, but Charlotte insisted. She grabbed a towel from the counter and handed it to him. He sat in a corner booth, his wet clothes dripping onto the floor. Charlotte didn't mind. She turned on the stove and began cooking. She decided to make her grandmother's chicken stew, the dish that always comforted her on hard days. She chopped fresh vegetables, added chunks of tender chicken, and let the pot simmer as she baked a fresh batch of cornbread. The diner filled with the warm, inviting smell of home-cooked food. While she worked, she glanced at the man. He sat quietly, staring out the window at the rain, occasionally wiping his eyes with the towel. Charlotte set the steaming bowl of stew and a plate of cornbread in front of him, along with a glass of iced tea. She had also packed a small bag of cookies and bread for him to take. "This should tide you over for tomorrow," she said softly. The man looked up, his eyes glistening. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. He took a spoonful of stew and paused, savoring the flavor. "This tastes just like my mother's cooking," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't had anything like this in years." He introduced himself as Henry, a former accountant who had lost his job when his company downsized. He explained how medical bills for his late wife had drained his savings, leaving him homeless. As he spoke, Charlotte listened, nodding and sharing parts of her own story. She told him about her husband's passing and how she had struggled to keep the diner running while raising her kids. Henry finished his meal and leaned back with a contented sigh. For the first time that evening, he looked calm. Before leaving, he pulled a small notepad from his coat pocket, wrote something on a piece of paper, and placed it on the table. Charlotte tried to stop him. "You don't need to leave anything," she said, but he simply smiled and walked out into the night. Curious, Charlotte picked up the folded note. Her hands shook as she read the words. It wasn't a simple thank you note. Henry wasn't just a regular accountant. he had been the chief financial advisor for a prominent investment firm that worked with some of the country's largest restaurant chains. The note read, "I've been observing your diner for weeks. Your dedication, skill, and kindness have not gone unnoticed. I have connections in the restaurant industry who are always looking for partners like you. Tomorrow, I'll return with investors. They need to see what I saw tonight: heart, skill, and true hospitality." Charlotte's heart raced. She stayed up late cleaning the diner, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Could this really be happening? The next day, Henry returned with 3 sharply dressed investors. They sampled her menu, asking about her recipes and complimenting her food. By the end of their visit, they offered to partner with her, promising to expand her diner into a chain while keeping everything she loved about it intact. Within 6 months, Charlotte's Homestyle Diner had expanded to 3 new locations. Henry became her business advisor, guiding her through the challenges of running a growing business. The original diner remained unchanged, with its red booths and comforting atmosphere. Regular customers still came for her famous chicken stew, now branded as the chain's signature dish. Charlotte's children, Lucas and Emma, were proud of their mother. They helped at the diner on weekends, learning the recipes she had inherited from her grandmother. Charlotte also hired single parents and struggling students, ensuring her staff always had enough to eat, just like she had done for Henry. The note Henry left that rainy night was framed and hung in Charlotte's office as a reminder of how a single act of kindness can ripple through countless lives. Every time Henry visited the diner, he ordered the chicken stew. And every time Charlotte caught him smiling, the same gentle smile he had on that cold, rainy night. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Mystic Tales for more inspiring stories, and leave a comment below telling us how this story made you feel. We'd also love to know, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments.